All right, guys, this is one of those videos that if you're not just an absolute crazy Bleach fan, you probably won't even get it or appreciate it. But we're going to dive into breaking down all the esoteric, occult, and religious symbolism behind Uryu Ishida's Vollstanding, but much, much more. We're going to dive into how the reveal of Uryu Ishida's Vollstanding has changed the ending of Bleach forever. We can now tie Uryu to not only the original sin that sealed the Soul King and separated the three realms, but we can also obviously tie him to the death of the next Soul King, Yuhabak. Guys, this Uryu's Vollstanding has changed everything. We're going to dive into not only his connection to the Soul King, but his upcoming fight against Hashwolf and how Uryu will be utilized in the final battle against Yuha. Guys, let's dive right into this one. Now, understand there's still a lot to piece together for this theory. There's a lot that we don't know about the Soul King, and I'm not saying that Uryu Ishida was present during that initial ritual that sealed the Soul King and split the three realms, but I'm saying that in that flashback, we saw that those arrows were a physical representation of the three realms being split in that like primordial stew that the Soul King and Yuha are setting in. So just like those arrows are the symbolic for the split of the three realms, Uryu Ishida's Vollstanding is symbolic for what he will go on to do and ultimately slay the new Soul King, that is Yuha. Now, the reason why this is so incredible is because the ending of Yuha 10 years ago was a complete ass pull. We all know that. The Oshualan Silver Arrow was pulled out of nowhere. Now, in this case, in the anime's case, it's so incredible because they're getting to go back and clean up things that Kubo wanted to clean up back in the day. So with Uryu's Vollstanding reveal, it was incredible because it's a complete representation of what Uryu will go on to do. So just like how the arrows were a representation of the sealing and more or less the destruction of the Soul King, we know that Uryu will fire that still silver arrow that ultimately nullifies Yuha Bak's power and allows Ichigo to defeat him. And then if you read Can't Figure Your Own World, you know that Yuha ultimately becomes the linchpin for the three realms, the new Soul King. So if you're watching Bleach and you saw Uryu Ishida's Vollstanding be revealed, it probably clicked in your head like the arrow motif is the exact same thing as the arrows in the Soul King flashback. There is no way that's a coincidence. It's all a representation of what Uryu's going to go on to do, and it's absolutely incredible. This kind of foreshadowing is amazing because we've already seen Ryukin with the still silver, so they're setting the stage for the death of Yuhabak instead of it just coming out of nowhere. So we've seen the still silver, and now we've seen Uryu's Vollstanding. So more or less symbolically, he is the bow that fires the Oshualan silver arrow. So just imagine this. The final battle is going to be quite different. Obviously, it's going to be longer, more drawn out. We're going to get quite a bit more action. So in the anime's ending, I could imagine Uryu showing up using his arrow motif Vollstanding to ultimately fire the final shot at Yuha that nullifies his power. So he is the representation of the arrow, of the bow, and he fires the still silver arrow to defeat Yuha. It is incredible foreshadowing. Kubo really likes to throw in little details into his story that they won't just come out and say like, hey, the arrow motif is tied to the arrows that were in the Soul King flashback. But as a fan, you can make that connection and be like, oh, that's really cool. Uryu, just like those arrows ultimately played a part in splitting the Soul King and giving us the world that we have now in the Bleach universe, Uryu does that for his generation per se. He destroys Yuha, the new Soul King, or doesn't destroy him, but fires the shot that allows Ichigo to destroy him, and then it allows the Zero Division to ultimately seal him as the new Soul King. And so, since he is the son of the woman that the still silver came from, and he's firing the still silver arrow in his Vollstanding with the arrow motif, it all just kind of plays into how great of a storyteller Kubo truly is. Now, let's go over what arrows signify in our real world religion and occult beliefs and see if any of these beliefs in the real world stick to Uryu's arrow motif. So we do know that Kubo likes to use real world religions, such as just like the Gote 13 and the Soul Reapers are based off of Buddhism, and the Quincy are based off a bastardized version of Christianity. Kubo takes from these beliefs and adds it to the symbolisms of his character. Now, I'm not saying that Kubo had this in mind with Uryu's Vollstanding, but let's just go over what arrows mean in our beliefs and see if they stick for Ichigo. Now, in ancient Greece, their priest or their shaman, they used to perform an ancient ritual called bellomancy, and how it worked is they would use 5 to 10 sacred or blessed arrows. They would put them in a circle, and they believed that it gave them the ability of divination or soothsaying, or more or less the ability to see the future. So that somewhat works with Uryu, because we do know that Yuha shared the Almighty with Uryu in his battle against Senjimaru, or he more likely wouldn't have been able to move around in her Bankai. So I find that kind of neat that Kubo could have pulled from that ancient art of bellomancy as far as his design for Uryu. But let's see what the arrow means in the Christian Bible and see if that sticks for Uryu. Now, almost always in the Bible, an arrow signifies resolve. So in Elijah's case, it signified Elijah's resolve, and even in some cases, the arrow represents God's resolve itself. And so I found that interesting, because as soon as Uryu revealed his Vollstanding to Ichigo, he says, "Ichigo, let me show you my resolve." And with the arrow motif of his Vollstanding, I found that pretty neat. I'm a religious major, or a religious study major, so whenever I see or witness any symbolism in this story, I instantly am like, oh, I wonder if Kubo was thinking the same thing. So I wouldn't doubt, being that he did he was heavily inspired from the Christian Bible, I wouldn't doubt that that's not a coincidence that he's relating his resolve to this Vollstanding. Just a neat little tidbit. Now, in Buddhism, the arrow always represents power and divine intervention. So that somewhat fits for Uryu too. I think the arrow motif is perfect for him, especially after going over how people believed arrows had a sacred power back in the day. Anyways, I find all this extremely interesting. The religious symbolism in Bleach is off the charts. The Japanese people really love the Bible, and so especially Kubo, and so he's heavily inspired from things of the Christian canon. Something they're doing with Uryu's character that I really appreciate is they're making it seem as if he really did want to cause harm to Ichigo. And hear me out. In the original manga, we all kind of knew, like, yeah, Uryu's gonna, like, this whole turn heel, it's just all an act. He's doing this so he can ultimately take out Uryu, or take out Yuha, and I still believe that's the case. But in the anime, they're making it seem as if Uryu actually doesn't have a problem, like, going after Ichigo. Like, he's thinking, like, hey, this is bigger than you, Ichigo. I'm the only one that can do this. Like, when he says stay out of my way, he truly meant it. Like, if you go through this battle, Uryu actually takes a neck shot at Ichigo, and if it wasn't for the blue, then that shot would have caused some serious damage to Ichigo, meaning Uryu was he may not have been intending to kill Ichigo, but he was definitely trying to harm him, and that's something that we did not see in the actual manga. He just shot the floor out from underneath him and let him fall to his death, per se. Uryu's bloodlust in this it's quite awesome. It really gives, like, I know that Uryu isn't a bad guy in the end, and even knowing that, during that battle between him and Ichigo, I was still thinking, like, dang, Uryu, like, you're really doing this. So that's a testament to the anime staff and how well they're handling Uryu's character. While we're talking about that fight between Uryu and Ichigo, during the beginning of the battle where Uryu's firing arrows at Ichigo and he collapses the floor underneath Ichigo, and Ichigo falls into, like, Ryo's palace corridors, and then Uryu starts blitzing Ichigo with shots from every direction, coming through the walls, the pillars. That's totally a throwback to Uryu's fight against Yami, where he does almost the same thing and Yami falls through the floor. That was an excellent Easter egg that I didn't see anyone else talking about. Maybe I'm crazy, but I think that was a total callback to Uryu's fight against Yami. Speaking of upcoming fights, I mentioned how the final battle between Yuha, Ichigo, Aizen, Renji, how it's going to be much different and how Uryu's going to be much more involved. We're going to see Uryu bouncing around the battlefield in his Vollstanding, trying to get a good shot on Yuha. It's going to be so incredible. But I say that to say this. Before that, we'll get the Uryu versus Hashwalth battle. And when I say two titanic powers clashing, it's going to be insane because obviously Hashwalth is one of the strongest Schutzstaffel members. He has access to the Almighty while Yuha's sleeping, and his balance shift is one of the most hacks abilities in the series. And so we're going to see a battle between Hashwalth and Uryu that is going to blow our minds. It's going to be so much different than what we saw in the manga. Not only will we have Uryu utilizing this Vollstanding, but we'll have him utilizing a stronger version of it because he didn't even have the Quincy Halo that allows every Quincy to perform Slave Rei, and it's the complete domination and absorption of Reishi, meaning this Vollstanding that he revealed to us in the battle against Ichigo was a weakened version where he wasn't going all out and he wasn't even using the antithesis. An all-out version of Uryu is going to be one of the strongest characters we've ever seen in Bleach. And that being said, his opponent Hashwalth is going to be pulling out all the stops. We're going to get to see Hashwalth's Vollstanding, which, guys, tell me in the comments below, what do you think Hashwalth's Vollstanding is going to look like? Obviously, he's going to have the scale motif possibly incorporated into it, but he's also got his shield and sword. I just think this opens up the doors for an incredible Vollstanding design for Hashwalth, and we'll get to see him and Uryu battling it out. We'll get to see Uryu actually use the antithesis. If Uryu would have went all out in his battle against Shikai Ichigo, it would have been much more one-sided. We see that Ichigo was holding back in his battle with Uryu, and the Getsugo Jusho could have easily taken out Uryu, but if Uryu were to have used the antithesis, he could have just gotten Ichigo with his own attack. The antithesis is one of the strongest shrifts in Bleach, and the fact that he wasn't using it, that's why he calls Ichigo naive. It's not because he's saying, like, you're naive because you're going up against Yuha, my master. He's saying you're naive because you don't even realize how easily I could take you out right now. Like, I'm showing you mercy, Ichigo. It plays more into just how good that battle between Uryu and Ichigo in the anime actually was. I really do love Uryu's Vollstanding. Like I've mentioned throughout this whole video, the arrow motif is perfect for Uryu, especially going over all those real-world beliefs when it comes to arrows that we just talked about. Not just that, but Uryu's power progression it's been quite insane. Obviously, it just spikes in the Thousand Year Blood War, but his range with this new Vollstanding is insane. It almost has the effectiveness of Byakuya's Bankai, the Senbon Zakura Kageyoshi, but he's also able to create constructs, almost like a Quincy Green Lantern, per se. I mean, he's able to trap Ichigo in almost a Quilge-esque jail-like ability. Now, Ichigo obviously wasn't trapped in there. He could have probably gotten himself out, no problem. But we see that Uryu's actually able to he constructs the jail and then he constricts it and it explodes. I'm calling it a jail, but what I mean is he constricts the cage that he trapped Ichigo in, the Reishi cage. But what all this is the complete domination of Reishi. It's just going to show that Uryu Ishida is the quintessential Quincy. He is, I mean, for lack of better terms, the perfect Quincy. And so even without Slave Rei, he's still able to have complete domination of Reishi with those little Reishi arrow constructs that he's able to construct. And we see that those not only are like heat-seeking missiles per se, but they also explode on contact. So yeah, Uryu Ishida's Vollstandig has the effectiveness of Byakuya's. He's got the effectiveness of Quilge's jail because he's able to create a cage-like construct. More or less, he can manipulate these reishi arrows to do his bidding, to do his will. It's such an incredible power for Uryu. Guys, I could go on and on about the anime. I haven't really talked about it much, and I haven't really been posting any what ifs because of how much lore we've been getting with the Bleach anime. I mean, we're about to learn more about the Soul King, about Yuha's divine conception. I mean, just I'm hoping at least. So much more backstory that we're going to get to learn that we didn't learn in the manga. And so when I'm writing these what ifs, I want to take that into account because things will be changing. I've been actually writing some of the Hell arc. I don't know if you guys would be into something like that, but when I was doing this video on Uryu, I got to thinking, like, man, if Uryu still has access to his Vollstandig, the Antithesis, all his Quincy powers in the Hell arc, he's easily going to be one of the biggest players in that arc if it does happen. But yeah, I've been somewhat writing some fanfic for that, a what if per se. I'd love to create some animations for it eventually because if we're going to be waiting some time for the Hell arc, so it'd be fun if we kind of started writing it ourselves to see how close we could get to it. Anyways, I'm rambling, but yeah, Uryu is going to be quite the player in the Hell arc, and he's quite the player now because, like I said, with this new Vollstandig reveal, he's easily one of the strongest characters in the series. But guys, I want to know what you think about the Soul King theory, if Uryu has anything to do symbolism wise with those arrows that we saw in the flashback. I definitely think I'm onto something here. Even if I'm not, it's still a ton of fun to think about. I really don't think it's a coincidence that the arrows that litter his Vollstandig design are the same design from the arrows in the Soul King flashback, but who knows? Maybe I'm crazy. But I want to hear from you guys down in the comments below. What did you think about our real world religious beliefs when it comes to arrows? Have you heard of anything like that? I found the whole Bellamancy and the future sight thing quite interesting, especially with what's going on with Uryu and his sharing of or Yuha's sharing of the Almighty with him. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens with that. I'd love to hear any predictions you guys have. Let's talk about Uryu's Vollstandig. What symbolism did you catch from it? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you think of his Vollstandig? Do you like it more than his Let's Steal form that we saw in the Soul Society arc? I'm a sucker for that form. I love the little shoulder shield that he has, and then the one reishi wing, and then which is what he does to Mayuri in that episode or in those chapters is insane. But I also love the arrow Vollstandig as well. Anyways, guys, I want to talk about it in the comments below. Let's talk all things Uryu. Let's talk his connection to the Soul King. I want to talk about his battle between Hashwalth and what you guys think that's going to be like, what Hashwalth's Vollstandig could possibly look like, and how you think Uryu will be utilized in the final battle against Yuha. Anyways, guys, until the next video, guys, I cannot wait for today's episode. We'll talk about that as well if you want. This is Sterling signing out. Have a great weekend.